Hi, it's Nate Charles. Welcome back to the Rule of Law Brief. You'll sometimes hear arguments online that go something like, well, Donald Trump can't be authoritarian. If he were really an authoritarian leader, we wouldn't be able to criticize him on social media. That line may sound clever on its surface, but it collapses under even the most basic political science. Authoritarianism isn't a light switch. It's not binary. It's not all one thing or all another. It's a spectrum. Countries don't jump from democracy to dictatorship overnight. They drift. They erode. They slide into the gray zone long before they lose the ability to tolerate criticism outright. And somewhat counterintuitively, it's in that gray zone where the most danger lies. When you map governance types on a continuum from full democracy all the way to full autocracy, you don't get a straight line of increasing danger. You actually get an inverted U-shape, almost a bell curve. At one extreme, full democracies are extremely stable. They provide real, nonviolent channels for dissent. Elections, protests, public speech. People have meaningful ways to push back against the government without turning to violence. At the other end, full autocracies are also very stable, but for the opposite reasons. They smother dissent before it can organize. Opposition groups never get off the ground. In the most authoritarian societies, people will even turn on each other and report their close family members for any sort of dissent. The turbulence tends to happen in the middle. Political scientists call these systems anocracies. They're hybrid regimes. They're partially open, but they're also partially repressive. They allow just enough political space for opposition groups to form, but they respond inconsistently or harshly enough that these groups conclude that peaceful channels won't work. They don't take their disagreements to the courts. They take their disagreements to the street. And according to the doctrine, that's where political violence is most likely. In countries drifting away from full democracy, but not yet at full authoritarianism, which brings us to the United States. As the Trump movement pushes more authoritarian policies, whether through rhetoric, executive overreach, or attempts to weaken democratic guardrails, the country moves along that spectrum in the wrong direction. Not into dictatorship necessarily, but away from the stable end of the continuum. And once you start to make that shift, the research predicts exactly what we've been seeing: a rise in political violence, extremism, and the normalization of coercive tactics. So no, the existence of online criticism doesn't prove Donald Trump isn't authoritarianism. It proves something else: that authoritarianism grows long before censorship arrives. And the doctrine tells us clearly that it's at this middle ground, not at the extremes, where societies are most at risk. And before anyone watching decides to dismiss all this as just some academic social theory, or as some critics like to put it, something dreamed up by a libtard on the internet, let me stop you right there. This isn't coming from Twitter. It's not coming from a political science blogger, and it's not coming from any partisan think tank. The analysis that we're talking about here comes straight out of Human Factors, Considerations of Undergrounds and Insurgencies, originally published by the Special Operations Research Office and republished in 2013 by the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab in collaboration with the U.S. Army Special Operations Command J3X, the U.S. Army's Unconventional Warfare Directorate. In other words, this framework comes from the same doctrinal ecosystem used to train special forces, intelligence personnel, and national level planners. It's not ideological, it's not partisan, it's behavioral science and political instability research distilled into operational doctrine. So when we start talking about authoritarian drift, the instability of hybrid regimes, or the rising risk of political violence in the United States, this isn't hand-waving. This is what the professional literature predicts, and we're watching it in real time.